Hello again, everyone. I'm Daniel the Cross-Cultural Nerd with another video for you today. I've been wanting to do some tabletop RPG content for a while. I didn't really get all that much off the ground on the old channel, except for a couple sourcebook ranking videos and other things. But I know there's already a lot out there as it is, but I'm going to throw my metaphorical hat into the ring anyway. And while I've spent a lot more time with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition than with any other system so far, I've mostly switched to Pathfinder 2nd edition of my own gaming in the wake of the OGL shenanigans this past January. I'm planning to make some videos focusing on classes, ancestries, spells, and other aspects of Pathfinder 2nd edition. I will also dive into character builds from time to time, and I'm also mulling a dive into Starfinder for more science fiction-oriented stuff. Now, I do need to note, as I mentioned in a past video recently, I had planned to do both D&D 5e and Pathfinder 2nd edition initially. However, in the wake of Wizards of the Coast stepping up on their douchebaggery and sending the Pinkertons after Dan Cannon over those leaked Magic the Gathering cards, as I said before, I'm going to be limiting my 5th edition content to character build videos done in conjunction with Pathfinder 2nd edition for current players. Anything beyond that, especially stuff for new players and ranking videos, I'm limiting only to Pathfinder and maybe Starfinder, as I don't want to encourage new players to drop money on a company willing to cross that kind of a line unless they clean up their act first. More of that in my video in this link. Anyway, enough of the diatribe. We'll start with a basic tutorial for any new players. We're going to go over determining ability scores, race, class, skills, background, equipment, and spells, while I make my own character in the process to show as an example. Now let's get started. Optimally, you will need the Pathfinder 2nd edition core rulebook. It has everything you need to make a character, and at 640 pages, it has a good deal more core options than does the Player's Handbook of D&D 5th edition. As you can see, I have the paperback copy. Hardback's a little bit more expensive, but sturdier. There are more source books out there as well, with a bunch of options, several of which will be combined with the core rulebook into the Pathfinder Player Core coming out this November. Now, if you're just getting started with the system and you're worried about the $60 price tag on the core book, you still have plenty of options. For one thing, on the Paizo website, you can buy legal PDFs for almost every volume for significantly less than the price of a hard copy. I think it's around half the price, less if there's a sale. And if you still don't want to spend any money, there's a website called Archives of Nethys, which has literally every single character option for Pathfinder 1st and 2nd edition and for Starfinder to reference for no cost whatsoever, all with the official approval of Paizo itself. The site is an absolute godsend, so if you're low on cash, you can still play. Now, on to character creation. Let's explain the ability scores before we start with the book-prescribed method of determining stats. What you're going to hear is very similar to how it was in Pathfinder 1st edition and Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. But I'll put this in terms of people coming to it from D&D 5th edition or just for brand new players. There are 6 ability scores: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, just like D&D. A brief explanation for those new to tabletop role-playing games is the tomato analogy. Strength is how well you can crush a tomato. Dexterity is how accurately you can throw a tomato. Constitution determines if you'll get sick from eating a rotten tomato. Intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put a tomato in a fruit salad, and charisma is being able to sell the tomato for a good price. But, to go into a little bit more detail, strength determines how hard you hit with most melee weapons and certain thrown weapons like javelins. It determines how much you can carry and whether you can wear the heaviest armors. And it also affects how well you do most athletic stuff, breaking free from restraints, etc. Those coming from D&D 5th edition should note it determines all melee damage rolls, even with finesse weapons, unless you have certain feats or class features. There also is no strength saving throw. Some of what the strength saving throw in 5th edition entailed is grouped in with the fortitude saving throw like it used to be before 5th edition. Dexterity affects your ability to dodge things, sneak, do acrobatics, thievery, hitting with finesse weapons like daggers and rapiers, using ranged weapons like bows, and many other things. It also can affect your armor class, which affects how tough it is to hit you directly. Those coming from D&D 5e should note it's not quite the jack-of-all-trades master stat that you may be used to, but it's still quite versatile. Dexterity saving throws in 5e are called reflex saving throws here, and again in every edition before 5e. Also, you should note it is no longer the default stat for determining initiative, but I'll go into more detail on that later. Constitution has no devoted skills, but it helps you resist poison, disease, and exhaustion, and, most importantly, affects how much health you have. The related saving throw is called a Fortitude saving throw. Intelligence is your mental acuity and your depth of knowledge on Arcana, Society, Occultism, and the narrower lore skills. Your investigative ability, and your skill at crafting. It also affects the number of languages you can speak and the number of skills you can have at the start. The Magus, Witch, and Wizard classes, along with most Psychics, also use it for their magic. Even if you're not playing a class specifically dependent upon intelligence, it is far less of a dump stat and is almost as versatile as Dexterity. But there is no intelligence saving throw for those who play 5e. Wisdom affects your intuition, your general awareness, your perception, the skills of medicine, nature, religion, and survival, and your ability to resist most mental effects like charm and fear. Clerics and druids use wisdom for their magic, along with any rangers that have warden spells. The related save is called a will save, and it lets you save against the mental effects that in 5e were covered by intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. 5th edition fans will note nature and religion were intelligence-based in 5th edition, but are wisdom-based here. Also, something very important to note, perception is a skill in which everybody is trained, separate from the other skills, and it is the chief stat affecting when you go in combat, or the initiative order for the new people, as seeing the combat zone well helps you quite a bit. The exception is when you are specifically using a different skill to try to get an edge in an upcoming encounter. Examples might be using stealth to sneak into a better position, or deception to try to get a potential opponent to lower their guard before you make an attack. Charisma governs interpersonal interactions and the general force of your personality. How well can you persuade, intimidate, or deceive someone? How is your stage presence in performing beyond mere technical ability? Bards, champions, oracles, sorcerers, summoners, and some psychics use this stat in their magic, and it affects several abilities of the thaumaturge. There is also no charisma saving throw. I was never a huge fan of point buy or standard array in D&D 5th edition personally, although I could understand its appeal. I do, however, very much like the prescribed method of determining abilities without rolling in Pathfinder 2nd edition. You start with a 10 in every ability score, and they go up or down from there depending on your choices in ancestry, class, and background. Note that at level 1, no ability score can go over 18, but as you level, you can take an ability well over 20, even without magical items. So, let's make a character. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, instead of races and sub-races, we have ancestries and heritages. There are no fewer than 36 ancestries available to choose from, ranging from the really common ones in the core rulebook, such as humans, dwarves, elves, goblins, and so on, all the way to the outright bizarre. Look on Archives of Nethys for more. Each ancestry has several heritages, so you can pick what kind of human or elf or lizard folk or humanoid miniature rhino or whatever that you want to play as. The half-elf and half-orc also are among these heritages, usually paired with human ancestry, but they can be paired with several others as well, especially if you have a permissive DM. Sorry, GM. DM's Wizards copyrighted Game Master we need to use. Also among heritages for most ancestries are the Beastkin, Changeling, Dhampir, Aasimar, Tiefling, elemental ancestries corresponding roughly to D&D's Genasi, and several more. We're going to go with a Halfling here. We'll keep it simple. Halflings add 6 HP to their pool of health, and they have ability boosts in Dexterity, Wisdom, and another ability of your choice, and an ability flaw in Strength. A boost is a +2 increase in an ability score, while a flaw is a -2 penalty. We'll put our free boost into strength to offset the flaw. This will give us a 12 in Dexterity and Wisdom and a 10 in everything else so far. Halflings have a minimum 2 languages that they can speak, Common and Halfling, and they can get more with a positive intelligence modifier. And they also have very sharp eyes, which lets them spot concealed or even invisible creatures more easily than most other ancestries. Comes in very, very handy when trying to track down some sneaky foe. Halflings have several heritages. Pathfinder has tons and tons of choices, and halflings have at least 7 heritages so far. Gutsy halflings are good at resisting fear. Hillock halflings are good at gaining health from rest and medicine. Jinxed halflings are never lucky, but can curse a creature to be clumsy. Nomadic halflings are great with languages. Observant halflings are good at passive observation. Twilight halflings can see somewhat in the dark. And finally, Wildwood halflings are great at maneuvering around trees and other plants. We're going to go with the Gutsy halfling heritage. When you succeed on a saving throw versus an emotion effect, you get a critical success instead. 5e gamers will see a similarity to the 5e halflings' fear resistance. And now we just need an ancestry feat. 5e streamlined feats to once every 4 levels and made them give larger bonuses per feat than in 3.5 edition and the original Pathfinder. But Pathfinder 2e goes back to its roots. You get ancestry feats, skill feats, class feats, general feats, and you're guaranteed at least 1 or 2 feats every level. If you're coming from 5th edition, each individual feat might give a smaller bonus from what you're used to, but they add up, and you get a ton. I'll include the relevant info in another link in the description, but we will go with the ancestry feat called Halfling Luck. You can re-roll a failed skill check or saving throw, but must take the new result, even if it's worse. 5e players will see another similarity to the Halfling's lucky trait in that system. Next, we pick a background. Backgrounds give you 2 ability boosts, a lore skill, another specific skill, and a skill feat. Archives of Nethys has over 170 backgrounds to choose from, significantly more than D&D 5th edition. I will put a link in the description so you can see them all. There's way too many to talk about here. For this character, I'll go with Emissary. It grants a bonus to your choice of intelligence or charisma. I will pick charisma for reasons I'll say later, and a free boost. I'll pick strength. It also grants the trained rank in the society skill and in a lore skill related to somewhere you've often visited. We'll go with Varesia lore for this, as I'm imagining this character as being from that region for reasons I'll mention later. We also get the multilingual skill feat, which gives us 2 new languages, plus another for when we get master rank in society, and yet another for when we're legendary in society. I'm imagining this character as someone from kind of a humble farming background called by their deity to go out and help people where they can. With this, we now have a 12 in Strength, Dexterity, Wisdom, and Charisma, and a 10 in Constitution and Intelligence. Now, I should note something about skill proficiency before continuing for the benefit of those coming from D&D 5th edition. In that system, you are either proficient or not proficient in a skill, and you add the relevant ability modifier when you make a check. If you're proficient, you add your proficiency bonus, which ranges from +2 to +6 depending on your level. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, it's a little bit different. You are untrained, which is not proficient, trained, expert, master, or legendary. When making a check with an untrained skill, you only add your ability modifier to the roll. What 5e players would call a proficient skill would be at least trained in Pathfinder 2e. If you are trained, along with your ability modifier, you add +2 and your level. With a 14 dexterity, your stealth roll untrained would just be a +2. Trained, it would be +5 at level 1 and +24 at level 20. If you are an expert, it is +4 plus your level. At master, +6 and your level, and at legendary, +8 and your level. So, without magic items, just your level and your training bonus alone, you could have up to +28 in a skill in which you have legendary rank, not counting your ability modifier or any class or ancestry features, feats, magic items, and so on. Remember, in Pathfinder 2nd edition and in editions before D&D 5th edition, numbers can go quite high. Next is our class. There are 22 classes in Pathfinder 2nd edition. Even that pales in comparison to 1st edition and the older editions of D&D. Just to give a brief summary of each, along with examples from Western and Eastern media. Alchemists are your science nerds dabbling in explosives, healing elixirs, or mutagens. Kind of like D&D 5e's Alchemist Artificer as its own dedicated class, but with more options. Think of Overwatch's Junkrat for the explosive version, Bianque, the legendary doctor from Chinese history for the healing version, and Dr. Jekyll for the mutagenic version. Barbarians are usually strong and let their rage augment their fighting ability, like the Incredible Hulk or Li Kuei from the Water Margin. Bards use performance or oratory in their magic, buff their friends, debuff their enemies, and have a variety of skills. Think of a more fantastical Alan Adale of Robin Hood fame, Mid-Valley the Horn Freak from Trigun, or maybe Li Bai if you like poetry performance, but not the version in the Chinese MOBA Honor of Kings or Wang Zhi Rongyao. That is totally a rogue. Champions, which many other systems, including D&D, call paladins, are martial champions of a deity and are bound by a sacred oath to uphold certain ideals and do certain things, often augmenting their martial prowess with divine magic. Think of a more magical Sir Galahad from the Arthurian legends or Alexander Anderson from Helsing. Clerics are your most typical divine casters, channeling magic from their god. They're often seen as healers, but they can fit several roles depending on their deity and doctrine. Think of the Buddhist abbot Sanzang from Journey to the West, or the prophet Elijah from the Tanakh and the Bible. Not technically Western there, but it is still very well known in the West. Druids channel nature magic and can change into animals, summon or have bonds with animals, and manipulate plants like Malfurion Stormrage from Warcraft, Poison Ivy from the Batman comics, or perhaps Agador as portrayed in Honor of Kings or Wang Zhi Rongyao. Fighters are your quintessential masters of martial weapons and armor, ranged or melee combat alike. Think of Eowyn from The Lord of the Rings or Miyamoto Musashi from Japanese history. Gunslingers use guns and crossbows. Yes, there are guns in Pathfinder's world of Golarion, though they are uncommon. 5e players will be reminded of the Artillerist Artificer. Think of Vosh the Stampede from Trigun or Cassidy and Widowmaker from Overwatch. Inventors are kind of like the Armorer, Battlesmith, and to a lesser extent Artillerist Artificers from 5e, but with way more options. They tinker with items magical and mundane alike and can focus on an armor, construct, or weapon innovation and upgrade it over time. Think of Forge, Iron Man, and Ironheart from the Marvel Comics, or Luban, the inventor and architect from China's Zhou Dynasty. Investigators solve mysteries, uncover plots, and discover secrets, bolstered by martial training. Think of Inspector Javert from Les Miserables, the book and Robert Downey Jr. film version of Sherlock Holmes, or the film versions of Chinese Magistrate Direnjia. Magi? Whatever. Combine the martial prowess of a fighter with the arcane magic of a wizard. 5e players can think of the Eldritch Knight with hints of the Bladesinger Wizard as its own class, but perhaps with an extra divine smite. One of their key features is casting a spell into their weapon before striking with it. Think of the Sith Assassin in Star Wars The Old Republic, Riska from the Shannara books, though he's multi-class with Druid, or Lian Xing from the Brezasoft game The Crystal of Kings. Monks use martial arts. Note that in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you can have strength-based monks as well. Think of Aang and Korra from Avatar The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra, or the residents of the Shaolin Temple in Dongfeng, China. For a strength-based monk example, think of Lu Zhishen from Water Margin. Oracles are like clerics in that they're dedicated divine spellcasters, but they channel their magic in such a way that grants significant extra power while having a pronounced drawback, which grows greater the more you take advantage of that power in a day. For some examples, think of Klaus Hargreaves from Umbrella Academy, the Oracle of Delphi from Antiquity, or Mary Magdalene from Chrono Crusade, though this class in particular is quite tough to pin to a particular pop culture character. Psychics are arcane casters who use magic through focusing the power of their minds. Think of Jean Grey and Professor Xavier from the X-Men and Legato Blue Summers from Trigun. Rangers excel in wilderness skills and martial prowess. Some may have skill in nature magic. 5e players should note that in Pathfinder they are not necessarily magical. They may even have an animal companion. Think of Aragorn from The Lord of the Rings or Sen from Princess Mononoke, but possibly with magic. Rogues are often sneaky and or charismatic, can do devastating critical hits, and have a wide variety of skills to use. It is also possible to have a strength-based rogue. Think of Gaston the Mouse from Lady Hawk or Ali Baba from Arab legend. Sorcerers use magic from the power in their bloodline or some other inherent characteristic. Think of Elsa from Frozen or Natsu Dragneel from Fairy Tale. Swashbucklers excel with more agile weapons and, by doing certain actions depending on your style, gain panache with which to do cool finishing moves on foes. Think of Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride, Reepicheep from The Chronicles of Narnia, or the female Chinese pirate leader Qing Shi. Thaumaturges use mystic implements, various esoteric items, and a wide variety of knowledge to combat supernatural threats and aid allies. Think of Abraham Van Helsing, John Constantine, or Integra Helsing from the anime Helsing. Witches get their magic from a mysterious patron, ranging from diabolical to fey to angelic and many more. They get a familiar and can cast hex spells with special properties. It's the most similar to the Warlock of D&D, but there are also several differences as well. Famous examples might include Faust, Facilier from The Princess and the Frog, or perhaps Zhonghui from Chinese legend. Though I should note, none of those have familiars unless you count Facilier's little shadow buddy. Finally, wizards get their magical ability through intensive academic study. Examples include Yennefer of Vengerberg from The Witcher and Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. For our character, I'll pick a cleric. Clerics are a well-rounded class with a good spell list, and I want a class with spells so you can see how to select magic. Clerics in Pathfinder 2nd Edition have Wisdom as their key ability and thus get a boost to it, bringing our Wisdom up to 14. Hit points are 8 plus your Constitution modifier per level. No need to roll a die each level, you just get the maximum amount. All classes are trained in Perception. Clerics have trained rank in Fortitude and Reflex saves and expert rank in Will saves. They are trained in the Religion skill, the divine skill favored by their deity, and additional skills equal to 2 plus your Intelligence modifier. Clerics are not known to be skill monkeys. They are also trained in simple weapons and their deity's favored weapon, along with unarmed attacks. They're trained in unarmored defense, a comfort for people coming from 5th edition, but untrained in all armors unless your doctrine, your subclass, allows you armor. They are also trained in attacks and spell DCs for divine spells. More on that later. So now we need to pick a deity with the fitting domain. We'll stick with one of the more well-known Pathfinder deities and go with Sarenrae, an angel turned goddess of healing, honesty, redemption, and the sun. This is also fitting as many farmers and halflings in universe worship her. She has heal as her divine font. That is, at the highest level you can cast, you can prepare extra heal spells equal to your charisma modifier. This is why I put my backgrounds boost into charisma, more free heals. Her divine ability is Constitution or Wisdom, but we don't have the requisite background, so we need not worry about that. Her divine skill is Medicine, so we now have the trained rank in that. Sarenrae has the following domains: Fire, Healing, Sun, and Truth. And if you have Gods and Magic, Repose. We'll go with the Sun domain, as the domain spells seem pretty fun, and the upper level domain spell has a great mix of damage and utility. Cleric spells include Burning Hands at 1st level, Fireball at 3rd level, and Wall of Fire at 4th level. Sarenrae's favored weapon, in which we are trained, is the Scimitar. As a weapon with the Forceful and Sweep traits, this weapon is effective at attacking multiple times in one turn. Clerics also have another kind of subclass in addition to the deity's domain called a Doctrine. So far, there are only 2 doctrines. Cloistered clerics put extra focus on their spell ability, eventually getting them to Legendary. They also get the Domain Initiate feat, which gives them extra spells unique to the domain they chose to focus on. War Priests focus more on martial prowess and fortitude saves. They can also use armor and use shields and weapons more effectively. I'm going to pick Cloistered Cleric for this one, as having the extra spells and spell effectiveness will be very nice. Next, we have our final ability score boosts. Choose 4 abilities and bump them up by 2 each. I'll pick Strength and Dexterity for weapon and defense reasons, Wisdom as the Cleric's most essential stat, and Charisma for better people skills and more uses of that healing font. This should bring us to 14 Strength, 14 Dexterity, 10 Constitution, 10 Intelligence, 16 Wisdom, and 14 Charisma. I like the role-playing possibility of going with the deity's favored weapon. Otherwise, I would give my Cleric a Finesse weapon and put more points in Intelligence, Constitution, or Charisma. But overall, these stats aren't bad, and they give a slightly higher spread than D&D 5e's point buy. The one drawback to this right now is the comparatively low constitution, but our cleric in this version is putting more emphasis on backline nuking and support, especially with the lack of armor. Pathfinder 2nd Edition also has a way to accommodate rolled stats. Because rolled stats have a higher likelihood of higher stats, in order to not break the game, after rolling stats you add your ancestry's boosts and possible flaw without the free boost. Then add one of the ability boosts in your background, and that's all. You don't even get the boost for your class's key ability. I asked around on Facebook and Reddit about this a while back, and my fellow nerds there were very helpful in clarifying what the core rulebook said. Now, with our ability scores, we also need to determine ability score modifiers. Take your ability score, subtract 10, and then divide the difference by 2. Looking at our stats, our 14 strength, dexterity, and charisma each have a modifier of +2. Our 10 constitution, and intelligence get modifiers of 0, as 10 to 11 is the average for a humanoid, and our 16 wisdom gets a +3 modifier. These modifiers get plugged into all our skills, saves, weapon strikes, spells, and anything else that originally bases its stat in part from an ability score. We'll plug in everything later. Now we need to select skills and languages. We're not getting very many skills since we just have average intelligence. We already have religion from our class, medicine from Sarenrae's divine skill, and society and Varesia lore from our emissary background. Now to choose 2 more. We'll go with diplomacy, as that will help our people skills, and athletics, since it has a lot of uses that will come in very handy. For languages, we're allowed common, halfling, and additional languages equal to our intelligence modifier if it's positive. Sadly, our intelligence is solidly average and has no bonus, but we can get 2 more languages with the multilingual feat from our emissary background. Now, I mentioned our cleric possibly coming from a humble background. I like the idea of our halfling cleric coming from this maybe a little farming village out in Varesia. Varesia is mostly controlled by separate city-states and the native Varesians, who are nomadic, and Shoanti, who have deep roots in their ancestral lands, experience a lot of discrimination from other folks, especially colonists from Cheliax. So this would be a good place for questing for a cleric working to help people and build ties and, help out the little guy. We'll go with the languages of Varesian and Shoanti. And now we have spells. In D&D 5th edition, spells are grouped by class, your wizard spells, cleric spells, sorcerer spells, bard spells, etc. In Pathfinder 2e, they're grouped by magical traditions. Many spells are shared between traditions, but generally you have arcane magic, divine magic, occult magic, and primal magic. Arcane magic is governed by logic, study, and rationality, as exemplified by wizards and magi. Divine magic is dependent on faith and most prominent with clerics, champions, and oracles. Occult magic seeks to explain the unexplainable and ephemeral in systematic ways, and is most prominent with bards and psychics. Primal magic draws upon one's connection to nature and is most prominent with druids. Some other classes like sorcerers, witches, summoners, etc. can fit within any of these depending on their type. Clerics are divine spellcasters and thus choose their spells from the divine spell list. At level 1, a cleric can prepare 2 level 1 spells and 5 cantrips from the divine spell list or from any other spells they get from their deity. For cantrips, we'll go with Divine Lance, Forbidding Ward, Guidance, Light, and Shield. For first level spells, we'll pick Burning Hands, which we get as a cleric of Sarenrae, and Protection. Don't forget, we also have the Healing Font from following Sarenrae, so with our 14 Charisma, we will have 2 first level castings of Heal without using a spell slot. Next is equipment. At first level, a character gets 15 gold pieces, or 150 silver, to buy basic equipment with. Now, if you're coming from 5th edition, this will not seem like a lot, since you can often start with over 100 and as much as 200 gold in that system, depending on your class and your dice rolls. But in this system, in Pathfinder 2nd edition, gold goes a lot further. Monetary rewards and prices are both lower. Anyway, unless your class or the GM gives you an exception, starting equipment must be of common rarity. We're not playing a war priest, so we're not proficient in armor, but a set of explorer's clothing, 1 silver, can be upgraded with more protection. For weapons, we'll want a scimitar, 1 gold, a morning star, 1 gold for other damage types, and a hand crossbow with 20 bolts, which is about 3 gold, 2 silver, for times when we need range and magic isn't as convenient to use. For gear, we're going to want an adventurer's pack, costing 15 silver, which altogether includes a backpack, bedroll, 10 pieces of chalk, flint and steel, 50 feet of rope, 2 weeks of rations, soap, 5 torches, a water skin, and a partridge in a pear tree. Just kidding about that last one. We'll also want a copy of Sarah Ray's religious text, 1 gold, and her religious symbol. We're going to go with the 1 silver wooden version to save some money. We'll also go with a writing set in case we need to write letters, 1 gold, a material component pouch for certain spells, that's 5 silver, and healer's tools so we can help with mundane medical aid, 5 gold. This will leave us with a whopping 6 silvers remaining. Weight is also very important. We're not dealing in pounds or kilograms though. The weight unit in this system is bulk. You're encumbered when you carry more bulk than 5 plus your strength modifier. This is a total of 7 bulk for this character. And then of course we need a name and other aesthetic info. We'll call him Phineas Hayward and he'll be age 24, 3 feet tall, 42 pounds with green eyes, strawberry blonde hair, and a healthy farmer's tan. We can leave backstory and connections and such up to you. Alright, finally there's plugging in all the numbers. As you can see here, feel free to pause so you can look longer. We've taken our ability score modifiers and plugged them into all the relevant spaces. Combined with our level and training bonuses and the skills in which we are trained or better, we have total modifiers for each skill, weapon, and further back we have our spells. I'll show you in a bit. We got our initial feats. As you can see, you can get lots and lots more. That's not technically a feat, but it's still a feature. Equipment so far, the bulk. Just general description stuff. And, you know, use your imagination for the rest here. And then spells. Spell attack, spell DC, spell slots per day. I didn't fill in the exact information. You can look at the spells on Archives of Nethys. And with that, we have our tutorial character ready for our Pathfinder 2nd edition. What kind of character would you want to make? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comment section below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Don't forget, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, co-host, Mastodon, and Hive. You can look up the stuff in the link tree in the description below. I'm Daniel, the Cross-Cultural Nerd. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.